My name is Teresa. The small brass key in my purse feels heavier than it looks, a symbol of the unexpected turn my life took this past weekend. As I drive home on this Sunday afternoon, the events of the past few days play like a vivid movie in my mind, a story I still can't quite believe actually happened. Let's rewind to the moment I walked back into the lakeside lodge for the second time. The atmosphere was a far cry from the previous evening. My mother sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped tightly around a coffee mug, her red-rimmed eyes a clear sign that she hadn't slept a wink. My father was on the back porch with my grandfather. Through the glass door, I could see them in deep conversation. My father had his head slightly bowed, while my grandfather sat upright in his rocking chair, speaking in a calm, measured tone. And my sister, Isabella, was nowhere to be found. My grandfather spotted me through the glass and held up a single finger, signaling me to wait. So I did. After he finished his talk with my father, he stood up, came inside, and enveloped me in a warm, unreserved hug. He smelled like the forest, a mix of pine and old oak. I had to clench my teeth to hold back my emotions. He motioned for me to sit down and then called everyone into the living room, my parents, Isabella and her husband, Henry, and my cousin, Lucas. He didn't raise his voice, he never needed to. In a steady, firm voice, he began, "I was sitting on that porch last night, and I saw and heard everything that happened in the entryway." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. He continued, "I watched my granddaughter drive away after being told there was no room for her at a family gathering, and her own sister suggested a motel with a smirk on her face." The room fell deathly silent. Then he dropped the bombshell. "I spent the night on the phone with my attorney. I had always planned to divide my estate equally among my children and grandchildren when the time came. But what I saw last night showed me the true character of some of you when you thought no one was watching." He fixed his gaze on Isabella as he said this. "From now on, my estate, including the properties, investments, and accounts, will be restructured. Teresa will receive my beach house outright, the one that's been in our family for 35 years and that Isabella has been coveting since she was 28. The remaining assets will be redistributed according to a new plan that's already in the works." Isabella's face contorted through a series of emotions in a matter of seconds. She opened her mouth to speak, but my grandfather held up his hand, and she fell silent. "This isn't a punishment," he explained. "It's a wake-up call. I hope all of you will think about the kind of people you want to be before my estate comes into play. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, and you have time to prove yourselves." After that, he stood up and asked if I wanted to take a walk down to the dock. We strolled out into the morning light, the beach before us as flat as a mirror, with the palm trees on the far shore perfectly reflected in the water, as if the world had been folded in half. We walked in silence for a while. Then he said, "You handled yourself well last night. Leaving quietly was the right move." I shook my head. I didn't feel like I handled it well at all. It hurt more than I thought it would. He nodded understandingly. "It's supposed to hurt. The ones who don't feel it are the dangerous ones. Now, let me take you back to how it all started." My parents, who are quite traditional and somewhat set in their ways, had been planning this family trip for months. It was a long weekend getaway to celebrate my father's 68th birthday. They rented a beautiful beachfront villa about 5 hours from where we all live. It was a magnificent place with 6 bedrooms, a large veranda, and a private pier that jutted out into the ocean. I'd heard them talk about it at family dinners, seen the pictures on my mother's tablet, and even helped Lucas pick out a birthday present for my dad. As far as I was concerned, I was a part of this trip. No one said otherwise, no one asked me to make my own arrangements. So, I took Friday off work. I packed my suitcase on Thursday night and loaded my car with a cooler full of drinks and a couple of birthday gifts on the back seat. After a 5-hour drive, I finally pulled into the gravel driveway of the villa. There were already 3 cars parked outside, my parents' sedan, Isabella's SUV, and the rental car Lucas had picked up from the airport. I walked in through the front door, feeling genuinely excited. I'd been working long hours at my job for months, and this weekend seemed like the perfect opportunity to unwind. My mother greeted me with a hug in the foyer, and my father came in from the veranda and patted me on the back. Everything felt warm and normal. Then I asked, "Which room is mine?" The warmth in the room vanished in an instant, as if a cold wind had blown through. My mother's face went blank, and she looked at my father. My father, in turn, stared at the floor. In that deafening silence, I knew something was terribly wrong even before he spoke. He cleared his throat and said, "We've booked rooms for everyone who needed them. Isabella, Henry, their son, Ethan, Lucas, and us. 6 rooms for the 6-bedroom villa. We assumed you'd make your own arrangements since you live alone and don't have a family to worry about." He said it so matter-of-factly, as if it was the most reasonable thing in the world, as if I was supposed to have known this without being told. I just stood there, holding my suitcase and a bottle of champagne, staring at him in disbelief. Before I could say a word, Isabella appeared at the top of the stairs. She must have heard our conversation because she was wearing that smug half-smile she always has when she thinks she's won. Leaning against the railing, she said casually, "We reserved rooms for Henry, Ethan, and me because we're a real family unit and need our own space." Then she looked at me standing there in the foyer with my luggage and champagne, and her smile widened. "I'm sure there's a nice hotel in town that's available," she said. I felt a complex mix of emotions wash over me. It wasn't just embarrassment or anger, it was a deep-seated pain, the pain of being overlooked by the people who were supposed to love me the most. Without a word, I set my suitcase down on the floor and placed the champagne beside it. I looked at my mother, who was avoiding my gaze, and my father, who still couldn't look me in the eye. "I understand," I said quietly. I picked up my suitcase again, left the champagne behind, walked out the front door, and got into my car. I didn't know where I was going, I just drove. The coastal road wound through palm trees, and the late afternoon sun cast long, flat rays across the road. I had this empty, hollow feeling in my chest. I turned my phone over on the passenger seat so I wouldn't have to see the screen. I didn't want to read any messages from my mother trying to explain or Isabella suggesting a hotel. I drove for about 25 minutes and pulled into a gas station parking lot. I rested my hands on the steering wheel and let the full weight of the situation sink in. Then I started looking for hotels on my phone. It lit up with dozens of missed calls from my mother, father, Isabella, Henry, and even Lucas. I ignored them all. I was lucky to find a small, cozy inn about 15 miles from the villa. It was a quiet place with pastel-colored curtains and a room that smelled like the ocean and fresh linen. I paid for one night, carried my suitcase upstairs, and sat on the edge of the bed in silence. My phone kept buzzing on the nightstand, but I didn't touch it. I'd spent years being the one to smooth things over, to be available at every family event, to adjust to everyone else's needs. But that night, I was done. I ordered food from a local diner, ate it alone at the small table by the window, and went to sleep earlier than I had in ages. The silence in that room was the most peaceful thing I'd felt in a long time. The next morning, I had 52 missed calls and a voicemail from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but something made me press play. It was my grandfather's voice, calm and steady as always. "Teresa, I saw what happened yesterday. I want you to come back here this morning. Not for them, but for me. Can you do that?" I thought about his message for a long time. Then I got dressed, checked out of the inn, and drove back to the villa. And that's how I found myself in the middle of that life-changing family meeting. I spent the whole weekend at the villa. I helped my father blow out his birthday candles, and I sat with my grandfather on the veranda every evening until the sun went down. And now, as I drive home with the beach house key in my purse, I know that some people may mistake my silence for weakness, but this weekend, my family learned that the quietest person in the room can have the most powerful ally.